to do a little experiment today that you all get to be a part of and try to record adult ed for the first time. So we're grateful that Anita is willing to be the first person.
I had to put makeup on this morning.
Not
my usual thing.
For us to try that. So let's open in prayer. God, we thank you for the example and witness of the saints. We thank you for those people who have worked for justice and reconciliation and for truth-telling. We thank you for the message that Anita will bring to us this morning. May it shape us and prompt us to love and good works for your kingdom in this world. In the name of Christ we pray all these things. Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, I want to tell you a little bit about me and then some people who've been close to me in my life through the years. So my most formative years, some of them were when I was a member of this church, St. Peter's Episcopal Church. St. Peter's is located in Ledue, Missouri, which is where I grew up. I think I lost my Midwestern drawl if I ever trained or whatever it was, if I ever had one, but that's Ledue. One of my best friend's father was the priest at St. Peter's. This is a photo of my best friend, Duffy. We're no longer allowed to use that name. He's called Jeff, and yes, that was the 70s. This is me at the time, member of the Ledue Marching Band. My friends called me Bonnie. I am now Anita. Jeff and I were talking a while back, and he asked me whether I knew something about his father, David, my former priest. In January 1965, civil rights leaders were involved. Let me just pass this for a second. That was the speech that Dr. King gave in 1965. He gave that speech because in January 1965, civil rights leaders were involved in a voting rights campaign in Selma, Alabama, where despite repeated attempts by local black citizens to vote, only 2% were on the voting rolls. February of that year, a state trooper shot and killed Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was a 26-year-old deacon, while he was attempting to protect his mother from that trooper's nightstick. In response to his murder, Hosea Williams and John Lewis attempted to march from Selma to Montgomery. Dr. King began a blitzkrieg of telegrams and public statements calling upon religious leaders from all over the nation to join us on Tuesday in our peaceful, nonviolent March for Freedom. I'm going to share with you now what Duffy shared with me about his dad. This is a letter from David Benson, dated April 1965. What I want to write about is my trip to Selma. I owe you all letters anyway. I thought you might be interested in hearing about the trip. You see, I finally joined all those busybody clergy and northern agitators. I was there from March 18th through March 22nd, which means I was there for the first day of the march on Montgomery. Why did I go? First, I went because I was invited. My friend Earl Neal, a Negro clergyman from Chicago who was working with the SCLC in Selma, told me in phone conversation that we could be helpful in coming. Secondly, I went because I felt I needed to see and hear and feel what is going on in the South and in one of the most important movements which is shaping the life and future of our country, the Negro Freedom Movement. Thirdly, I went from a simple guts response. I wanted to say for once with my life and my body what is often too easy to say with your mouth. 5 of us, 4 Episcopal clergy and 1 laywoman, left on the morning of March 18th during the tail end of one of the worst blizzards we've had that winter. We flew to Montgomery by way of Chicago and Atlanta and arrived about 3 in the afternoon. A friend of one of our parties drove us from Montgomery to Selma, and we got to Brown's Chapel a little after 4. That arrival I will long remember. Many people had questioned our going. Well, you will be in the way down there. The people that live down there don't want you there. When we pulled up in front of the chapel, a group of Negroes came out to meet us, to welcome us. They all shook our hands, insisted on taking our luggage, introduced themselves, all from Selma, and conducted us to the patronage where we were to register. It was the warmest welcome I can remember. We registered and were assigned lodging in various Negro homes near the chapel. After settling in, we went to an orientation center already in progress. Earl Neal was in charge of the session. Samples of information given. Make sure you have good identification and always carry money. Protection against the vagrancy charge. Never carry a penknife, nail file, hat pin, or any other thing that can be construed as a concealed weapon. Please don't go off on projects of your own, however helpful they may seem. Many of you are big chiefs at home and are used to being responsible leaders. Here, we need responsible followers. Remember, in terms of what you do here today, you are going home, but the people of Selma have to continue living here for a long time. After the orientation speeches, we were put through a workshop on nonviolent technique. This is where you have to learn how to fall and protect yourself if someone attacks you, and how to protect someone else who might be being beaten by trying to cover them so that you can absorb some of the beating yourself. Since the police had used tear gas at the bridge, we were given some training on how to handle ourselves and protect each other in case of tear gas. Several things stand out in my mind during the session. When someone attacks you, you fall away from the blow. You don't even put your own arm up to protect yourself. It may be interpreted as an attempt to hit. When a policeman stops you or calls you, you very politely obey his commands, but you always look him right in his eyes. You should never unnecessarily antagonize any person. Your presence at the courthouse or wherever you may be, will be appeared antagonizing to a posse man or white man just by itself. So don't try to antagonize them by your speech or manner. You do not want him to hit you, not only for your own sake, but you owe it to him to protect him from doing violence. That night, Thursday, we attended a mass meeting at Brown's Chapel. The mass meeting has many close associations with an old revival meeting. We had 7 speeches, much singing, praying, and a long time for offering. People were coming in and out all the time. Speeches were interrupted for announcements, so everybody was very relaxed and having a good time. Sitting up on the side balcony, I couldn't help thinking to myself that we were less than 100 miles from Birmingham, and there had been 5 bomb threats on that chapel in the last 2 weeks. Friday started, but then moved fast. Around 11, we went to our first demonstration, a licensed march on the City Hall to protest the arrest of a group of clergymen who had picketed the mayor's house. The march was uneventful, well organized, and disciplined. When we returned, there was another mass meeting. This time, James Bevel spoke for over an hour about the movement. I didn't hear all of it, but what I heard was great. The upshot of it was another demonstration. This one, a new kind, to make it possible for us from the outside to witness to the white community of Selma. We went over to the white residential neighborhoods in small groups of 5 or 6, 1 carload, to designated areas where we were to simply walk up and down in groups of 2, keeping the groups well apart so we could not block traffic or in any sense be a parade. The first cars over were arrested as soon as we got out of the car, and as more and more people came, the police brought at once to carry us down to jail. At the jail, we were lined up in the courtyard 40 abreast and about 10 deep, and made to stand for 2 hours. I was on the first busload, and they broke out billy clubs, small baseball bats, and gave them to a group of bystanders to guard us. We were told later that we were in protective custody. Those guys in the billy clubs were not intent on protecting us. After standing for 2 hours, we were marched off to the Negro Community Center next door to the jail. Wilson Baker came in about a half an hour later and told us he was going to take us home, but almost all of us refused to go. Our statement was Acts 16:35-38. So we spent the night in the community center. It was an interesting night. 352 of us, black and white, young and old, male and female, clergy, rabbis, housewives, students. Our leadership was 5 young Negroes. Because of their skill, there was no discipline problem. They kept us informed. They appointed monitors for small groups. They kept us doing enough things that the total group was maintained. At 11 o'clock, they separated the ladies and sent them upstairs to sleep. Amazingly, I did sleep that night on a concrete floor with my suit jacket and raincoat for a pillow. The next morning, the leaders appointed a cleanup detail, and when we were marched back to Brown's Chapel at 9 in complete silence, we left the community center cleaner than when we first arrived. On Saturday, we spent the day getting ready for the march. I was one who volunteered to be a marshal on the first day of the march. That meant I was responsible for about 24 people, to pass on instructions, to watch for people getting tired or sick, and to dissuade people from responding to harassment from spectators. About Sunday noon, the march began, following another mass meeting, this one out in the open. About 6,200 of us, most Negroes from Selma, marched about 8 miles that first day. It was quite an experience. The white crowds along the road stood mostly in silence, though there were quite a few who shouted taunts, obscenities, or curses at us. Some looked threatening, but to my knowledge, no one tried to attack any marchers. The Army had something to do with that. Perhaps the most impressive thing was the Negroes who stood along the march. They applauded, cried, sang, waved. For them, it was an unbelievable sight. There are people marching down an open road in Alabama, taking a protest to the white governor, with white people marching with them, and interestingly enough, even some white people from the South. There is so much to say. This letter will get too long. I will close with some impressions. First, some myths shattered. The idea that we were not wanted by the people of the South. That is only true if whites are the only ones you call people. I was stopped in the street time and time again by Negroes from Selma to greet me and thank me for being there. Another myth. The freedom movement is imposed on local Negroes by outside agitators like King. The Dallas County Voters League was organized 4 years ago in Selma by local Negro leadership and later invited the LCLC. Another myth. King and company are teaching the Negroes to hate whites. This impressed on me by a white man on the plane from Atlanta. I can't forgive him for that, he said. In 4 days, the only hate I heard or saw was from the whites. And what hatred that was. It is an indescribable feeling to look into the face of hatred. I guess I had never done it before. From the Negroes, I heard only love. They don't need to be taught hate. The man has been doing that for a long time. The man, the white power structure became very real to me. The man is the law, almost God. Who he says lives, lives. Who he says dies, dies. He decided who can walk the street, who can work, who has rights, who doesn't. I was greatly impressed by the young leaders, the ones out leading the demonstrations, teaching and persuading prospective voters, people with their heads in the noose every day. Young fellows in their late teens and early 20s, mostly young Negro Southerners. They are articulate, dedicated, knowledgeable. They are committed to what they are doing, yet I never saw any of them overbearing and contemptuous. One tremendous thing is that when a demonstration is to occur, it is described, explained, the dangers are pointed out, and then it is up to you to decide whether or not to join it. There is no pressure. If you don't join it, no one says nay. Your right of decision is respected. In one way, it is hard. You know that it is up to you. Once you've joined a demonstration, you are asked to follow orders of the leadership so that the discipline can be maintained. I learned a lot in Selma. I learned what it is to be very afraid and yet to be able to do what you have to do, not to be governed by fear. I learned what it can be like to live in a community which is colorblind, to know Negroes with all the walls down. When I came back and talked to Betty, that's his wife, about people I had been with, she kept on asking, was he a Negro? It was interesting. I had to stop and think. I'm convinced of several things. The Negro in the South knows more about courage and the meaning of freedom than anyone up here. He is developing a leadership which is responsible and constructive. It is very important for whites, whether from the north, east, south, or west, to be in on that movement. For that movement might not only be simply black versus white. Finally, the possibility in the South are really for creative developments of human relationships. If the whites hate the Negroes now, it is at least a relationship and the hatred on the surface where there is a possibility for dealing with it. But at the same time, if the whites continue to let Jim Clarks, the Al Lingus, the George Wallaces to speak for them, they will destroy themselves and be unable to creatively participate in a society in which the Negro has equal right, and that society is coming. Make no mistake about it. Our trouble here is that we are indifferent to the Negro, the invisible man. He can eat at our restaurant, but it is as though he is not there. We are against discrimination, but it really isn't the right time. We are not prepared to hire the Negro or have them move into our neighborhood. Protest marches mean nothing here. No one would care. Up here, it will take the slow, hard work of breaking down a hidden, unadmitted wall, which could destroy us. Well, I've run on long enough. I'll write soon. David. Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free and to proclaim the years of the Lord's favor." As a church on a mission to know Christ and to make Christ known to others, where's Selma in 2020? Where is good news needed? Who is seeking freedom? Where have we been blind to the needs of others? Who's oppressed? Who's hungry? And most importantly, as Dr. King said, what are you willing to stand for? Thank you. 2 minutes. If people want to share thoughts.
Another question at the end where, what are you willing to stand for? The converse of that is, what are you comfortable tolerating that you can live with? And the inaction speaks as much as the action. Yes.
I very much feel we've only just begun. I believe that the white people who think that they've come a long way are deluding themselves, and that in the last few years we have only just to get to something in this country that may take another 50 years to even become reasonable. I think that the intensity on the part of many, many people is going to get more serious and more difficult, and there's going to be a lot of, what's the old expression, separating the men from the boys. And I think that all of us should prepare for that and be willing to accept the fact that nothing comes without violence, without everything that tends to make most of us uncomfortable who seek only a comfortable life.
Of course, the answer is God, so that's the answer to the question. He is the answer, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and we're in Lent. And we're going to have 40 days to contemplate Jesus and his path all the way to the cross. That is the answer. So in terms of whatever affliction, you know, Michael King, Martin Luther King's original name that his parents changed to Martin Luther King, a mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing. And look at the 4 verses. You know, should I lose family, health, everything? I'm not gonna fear the day. We've already won. And it's only through God. And I love Martin Luther King. He's born in 1929. He's my father's age. So I can't wait to see him up in heaven.
Your question, like, what are you willing to stand for? It's really moving and important. And I always like think, oh, I'm pretty, aware. But then I always fall back to that I'm so busy. What can I do? And then I think, well, I'm too busy. There's nothing I can do. And I know for myself, it's finding the actions to take and then following through with that is where I need to make some changes in my life.
I think this was a very powerful presentation, and it was just good to see it again and to bring this to our attention again, to my attention. Just to understand more.
What I thought was, so this was my priest, and I never knew this history. No, Jeff and I were talking 6 years ago, and he said, "Did you know about my dad?" And he shared this letter with me. So, like Frank was talking about the whispers, it doesn't have to be big and just be quiet, and just know that we're walking in God's grace with whatever we're trying to share God's grace to others in whatever it is that we decide to do.
What do you want to spot?
What did you say?
What was the question? I said, how about some more of Anita's thoughts?
My thoughts about mission, because this is all about mission, and just that we all have the opportunity to be missionaries. I'm going to just go back to this slide. Not this one. If I can go back. We're all called to be missionaries. Oh, that's the one. That maybe, I'm not a priest, but maybe a part of the Lenten discipline could be contemplate this and try to do these things.
Yeah, and that as brothers and sisters of Jesus, as children of God, this Spirit is on us too. That it's not just only on Jesus to do these same things that Jesus set out to do.